Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Mosaic Podcast. It is crazy times. Not only do we have coronavirus outside, but somehow with the kids home and everybody using Wi-Fi, my Wi-Fi connection, and Dov, my guest today is a professional at making sound work, and he's like so firm on how it's working and what he's hearing and wanting it to be the best quality. And you can see just from everything behind him of who he is and what he does that he really wants to make it perfect. And right now it's less than perfect. So I'm hoping that we're going to get through with this. I'm hoping you're going to be able to hear me. I'm hoping he's going to be able to hear me. So let's just jump in. The man that I have before you today has become an acquaintance that I hope will become a friend. I met him through a very dear friend of mine, and she introduced us, and I had a conversation with him, and I just loved him from the start. He had me on his podcast, and he had 2 hours to talk with me because he created this new podcast, and that we went on together. But let me give you a little bit of his background. But you know, folks, I don't talk too much about his website. You can get all of the details on www.fullmontyleadership.com. You'll be able to hear everything about him. But he's a best-selling author. He has worked with diverse leaders and executive teams. He's written a book called Fiercely Loyal. And his program of bringing loyalty into companies is unbelievable. He's completely different than what you would have expected. And he started out by walking into a boardroom, being invited into a boardroom and told that the only way they would take him in the boardroom is if he didn't change who he was. And who he was a guy with hair down to his waist. He was wearing jeans, even though who he was also the people that hired him were the people that made his expensive, beautifully tailored suits. They said to him, "We don't want you wearing that. We want you to come in with your hair down, with your pants ripped, just like they are now, just like you are when you're relaxed. And we want you to walk in and see what happened." And he met with some pretty interesting thoughts because he challenged people right from the moment where he asked them if they were racist in a racist land. And they said, no, we're not racist. But he said, when you looked at me, what did you think? Did you already judge me? And from that moment on, he had him eating out of his hand. And that's his ability to change the perspective of how people see you, how you see what you're doing, and how you see the world. I love that about him because I used to do the same thing. I would go into New York board meetings in a jeans and a t-shirt because they would bring me in to help them to help their company innovate. And when I came in, people said, "I think you're in the wrong room." I said, "Okay, I guess you really don't want to innovate. You just want a stiff shirt. You just want a three-piece suit and come in here and tell you what you're doing is right. If you can't even see from this how off you are and how much you need to open up and expand and allow what you see to not be what you see," which is the theme of my book, The Mosaic. If you can't do that, how will you ever see what you're not seeing? How will you ever innovate? Enough of me talking, because this is not a show about me standing on a box and talking. What I want to do right now is introduce you to Dov Baron. He is a beautiful, beautiful man. Inc. magazine lists him in the top 100 speakers to hire. He's also one of the top 30 global leadership gurus. He's spoken at the United Nations, the World Management Forum, the New York National Speakers Association, and the Servant Leadership Institute. If you turn on the TV, it's almost impossible not to see him on there somewhere. That's how much he's out and about. And we have the honor of being with him right now. So Dov, thank you so much for being with us on the show. With all the complications that we have, thank you so much for being here with us.
Well, thank you, Denny. I'm honored and very pleased to be here. I'm delighted with the opportunity to serve and maybe awaken something in somebody. Just, even a flicker of light, it all makes a difference.
Yeah. Dov, talk to me about your parents. What did they do when you were growing up?
My parents, my mom was by trade what we used to call a machinist, but that is actually a sewing machinist. So she sewed purses and handbags and leather goods and all those kinds of things when I was a kid. She was a cleaner. My mom had about 3 jobs most of the time when I was a kid. My dad was a sparky. My dad was an electrician, but he was gone. Yeah, sparky, that's the English term. He was gone by the time I was 7. My stepfather, who arrived a little later, was a grease monkey. He was a mechanic. So very working class, very blue collar environment. And we were extremely poor.
The perfect soil for you to come out and influence some of the most influential people in the world. So what I'm all about is those moments of change, those moments where people see themselves in a situation and don't have the imagination or the thought process or the understanding that where they are in that moment is just where they are in that moment. So there's a great place for us to leap off from. How does somebody who has been brought up by a sparky, a grease monkey, and a machinist end up being where you are?
You know, it's an interesting thing. You've heard me talk about this before, Danny. I believe that human beings are born with what I call dragon fire. We have this fire within us that burns, and most of us ignore it or have it dampened down to nothing. And that was something that was not going to happen with me. I couldn't dampen it. I tried to fit in. I don't believe people are supposed to fit in. I think people are supposed to belong, and that's vastly different. And I tried to fit in like everybody else does, and I didn't. And so I knew that from being a small child. When I was 7, I had an interaction with the other side, let's call it that. And then when I was 14, I made the decision that I was going to leave where I was from, and I was going to travel the world and study with great teachers and masters and learn. And that's what I did. I never, ever fit in.
At 14, you did that?
I made the decision at 14.
Made the decision at 14. Wow.
Yeah. And I left at 21.
Wow. Our stories are so similar. All the players are different, but our stories are so similar.
Mm-hmm.
For those people who are sitting right now that are listening, that say, yeah, I have that dragon fire in me, but I don't know what to do with it. I'm scared to death of it because I'm scared to take the risks.
Yes.
What do you say to people like that?
May I tell a short story?
Well, please, with joy.
So one day, little John, little Susan, I don't know the name of the caterpillar that was crawling around on the branches, nibbling away at the leaves with all the other caterpillars, but feeling like they didn't fit in somehow. And every day as they came out, they were, trying to fit in. Everybody liked them because they did everything to be liked. But on a particular day, they looked up and noticed that many of their friends were gone. And when asking around, why is everybody gone? One of the other caterpillars pointed upward, and they looked upwards, and what they saw was these pods hanging, and went, oh, okay. And then another morning came out, and then suddenly there was no caterpillars and only pods. And so our friend, the caterpillar, felt very lonely and very sad and very depressed because it was all on their own. And on that night, they felt so depressed, went to sleep. When they woke up in the morning, it was a beautiful morning. And on that morning, all the pods opened in the sunlight, and exploded out of them was all these magnificent butterflies with hand-painted, beautiful, magnificent wings, all took to the air. And the caterpillar was so joyous and excited for them for a moment. And then our friend fell into a deep, dark depression because our friend had not gone into the pods, and our friend had not come out as a butterfly, and felt like, what's wrong with me? I must be defective in some way. So he takes himself to the edge of the bridge and throws himself off the bridge. And as he hits the water, it's broken and smashed into pieces, and all the pieces are broken off him. And it's so painful. He just hopes that this is a dream, and maybe he's going to wake up, be a caterpillar. Maybe he's going to wake up and be a beautiful butterfly. But no. In the moment where he just cannot bear it anymore, a total surrender, that our friend gets washed up onto the shore just between the river and the ocean. and lays there exhausted with a mighty thirst and thinks he wants a drink and leans over to a pool to take a drink. And as he does, sees this reflection of this beast behind him, an enormous, massive beast that's terrifying. And he freezes in the moment. And as he freezes, he notices coming towards him is a man. Now, he knows that caterpillars are supposed to be afraid of men, so there's a little hesitation, but this man is somehow different. This man is somehow glowing and doesn't seem to be intimidated or threatened by the beast that's behind him, but our friend is terrified that the man will be consumed by the beast. But instead, the man walks right up, puts his hand out and puts his hand on the beast. But what's strange is our friend feels the man touching him, yet he's touching the beast. He can see that. And the man says to him, "You are not a caterpillar. You were never a caterpillar. It is not your destiny to be a butterfly. You are a dragon." And our friend says, but I've tried to fit in. I wanted to be a caterpillar. I want to be a butterfly. I want to be beautiful. I want everybody to love me and see how beautiful I am. And the man leans in and says, "I am the father of dragons. And I have watched you. And I know that you are a dragon. Dragons fly with dragons. It was never your destiny to be a butterfly. Now you must breathe fire onto the lies. But first, you must breathe fire onto your own lies."
Love the story. I thought I was going to go another place, but I love it. So here's what I liked about the story where I thought it was going to go, which was really interesting. And I want your clarity on it, where it did go. Where I thought it was going to go is he looked up and he saw all of the other caterpillars had become in their pods and had become butterflies. And he was so sad that he was neither in the pod or neither a butterfly. But that his disappointment and his pain was only a matter of time, because over time, what would have happened is he would have gone into a pod and he would have become a butterfly. But you took the story in a totally different way. So the question now for me is, for those people who feel out of place, for those people who feel alone, for those people who are scared to step in to that dragonfly fire of a life that they have, maybe you've made the story even a little more scary. Because now they're not only what they thought they could be. They're not only sad because they're not the butterfly, the caterpillar who's turned into a butterfly. They're sad because they're a dragon and there aren't that many dragons around, or there aren't many people who understand dragons.
Who embrace being one, yes.
What's that?
There's not too many people who embrace being a dragon. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, and there aren't that many people who feel like they want to breathe the fire, because we've grown up to learn that dragons who breathe fire are slain by warriors who come out to kill those dragons because they're scared of them. Now come and answer the same question I asked you a moment ago. How now do I have the courage to be a dragon amidst a world of butterflies that breathes fire amidst a world of warriors that want to tear the dragon down and destroy him because they're scared of him?
Absolutely. And that's the point. They're scared of them. Dragons are not seen because they're feared, because they're fierce, not because they're evil. If you read all the literature on them, dragons are always protecting something magnificent. And often it's their own fire. And if you look in the legend of dragons, you'll see that that every dragon has all those hard scales, but there's one soft scale right over the heart. And that's what we are. If we're dragons, we're full of fire, but that fire is actually love. And we breathe that fire onto the lies. And, you know, yes, it is scary. But as Joseph Campbell said, if the path before you is clear, then it's probably someone else's path. It's not your path. And so we spend so much time trying to fit in, but that's not what we're supposed to do. I mean, think about having a closet and trying to fit things in it. When you try and fit things in it, you have to shove things out of the way and you have to contort things. You don't want to do that with yourself. Instead of fitting in, you want to belong. You want a place where you can stretch out your wings, where you can breathe your fire and it is embraced. Dragons are supposed to fly with other dragons. They don't fly with pigeons. They don't even fly with sharks. They fly with dragons. There is a message within you that burns so bright that if you don't deliver it, you will die feeling something is missing. And that is scary. Absolutely. I get it. It's terrifying. I've been there many times. But if I don't deliver what my fire is, I will die without ever living my purpose, without doing what I came here to do. But what's interesting about dragons is every dragon recognizes another dragon.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is we're not trying to change anybody.
Mm-hmm.
See, if you're trying to fit in, you're trying to fit in, so you're trying to get other people to fit in. So we're all shaving bits off each other. Dragons don't do that. Dragons give you the fire to lift you up so you can be you.
So the question lingers over the net in the volley of this conversation.
Fabulous.
Is everybody a dragon?
Everybody is born with the seeds of a dragon. Very few people will step into it because most people are consumed with trying to fit in. But the seeds of that are within you, within us all. And whether we go there or not is our own choice. We're free to do as we choose. But the ability to be a dragon is born within you. Yes.
So essentially what you're saying, if I've got you correct, is it's no wonder that so many people feel they don't belong. It's no wonder that so many people feel that they're not living up to their potential. It's no wonder that people feel that they're not good enough, because they're playing in a world that doesn't allow them to be themselves, which is really so much more than they ever dreamed possible. That if they would change the perception of who they are and what they came here to do, if they would, instead of focusing outward on what the world looks like out here, focus inward on the dragon flyer that lives inside of them and become that they would walk into the world igniting a world on fire, and the fire would not be a destructive fire. It would be the fire of love, which so many people are scared to death of. And that's why people try and slay the dragon, because who wants to really be met by such overwhelming love? We all say we do, but we're scared to death of it.
You know, that fire, what I explain to people is it's part of an alchemic process. There's an alchemy to it. So dragons are revealed in fire too. So what I explain about that is dragons are revealed in fire. You know my story of falling. Some people's fire, some people, the fire they go through, their baptism of fire is a divorce or a bankruptcy or a horrible diagnosis or some incident that happened that burns them down to the ground. They're revealed in that fire. They're burned to the ground, where they have a choice. And the choice is to then be birthed as a dragon, or to try and patch themselves back together and become who they were. And that's what most of us do. It's what I tried to do. It doesn't work because the truth has been revealed to you. And once it is, you can't deny it, but you can go into denial. That's different.
Okay. So I love where you're going with all this, and I see why you're now one of the top 100 leadership speakers to hire, because I can feel your passion in it.
Thank you.
Is the message that I'm getting what you're actually saying? And that's what I want to ask you. Is the message that I'm getting that people feel scared, people feel alone, people feel separate. But if they would walk into that feeling rather than trying to hide from it, they would find the key to the door of what makes them connected and whole and in place, rather than trying to always try to say, I'm not who I am, I'm something else. And it's the thought that I am not this dragon, your words, not mine, because I don't know that I believe that we're all dragons. I believe something else, but what doesn't matter. But that dragon that exists within all of us in your story, when we are disconnected from that, how could we feel anything else but pain and suffering? So the pain and suffering that we feel is actually the greatest thing that we could ever experience, because it's a key into the door of the experience of the answer to all that pain and suffering. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. As Joseph Campbell said, the cave you fear to step into is the one that contains the treasure you're looking for. So absolutely, we are terrified of the very thing we want. Anybody who's ever been in love and is in a genuine, healthy or healthier relationship will tell you that they probably tried to push away the best relationship of their life.
Yeah.
I've been married for 23 years. I'm more in love today than I was the day I got married. I'm incredibly blessed. And I can tell you that, you know, my wife and I teach a relationship program. And one of the things that I talk about right up front is how quickly I tried to push her away because she was giving me exactly what I wanted.
Yeah.
And people say, well, why do we do that? Why do we do that? Because it calls us to stop fitting in. When I told my best friend I was going to marry my wife, he says, you can't do that. And I said, why not? He had met her. He thought she was wonderful. I said, why not? And he said, because I know your highest maxim. And I said, okay, what is it? And he said, it's freedom. And I said, you're absolutely right. He goes, see, you can't get married. I said, you're absolutely wrong. And he said, why? I said, what freedom means to me and what it means to you is different. For you, what it means is your permission to enter new vaginas. For me, that's got nothing to do with freedom.
Yeah.
Freedom is an environment, any environment that allows me to be more of me than I was a moment ago.
Yeah.
And with this woman, I feel more free. And it's that freedom that's so terrifying. The very thing we want is the thing that terrifies us, whether that's love, as you talked about, Danny, which we all say we want, and yet every one of us have had an experience of pushing away somebody good.
Totally.
And yet hanging out with a dickhead, hanging out with somebody who's just a user, and then your friend said, someone else who really loves you says, why do you hang out with this person? Oh, you know, well, because you're so busy trying to save them.
Yeah.
Because you're trying to fit in and get those accolades, as opposed to holding on to the fire inside of you that serves the world. That's what's important.
So either this guy had a lot of coffee today, or he's just in touch with a passion that I want you all to have. So I'm going to come back and zero in again on this place where, and you've been dealing with this for a long time. You speak about it. You help people about it. You work with people on change, on transforming it. Yep. Why are we so scared of the very thing we want? Simple. Why?
It's a great question. Because the moment you get it, you'll realize you're not a caterpillar and you're not a butterfly. And that is a terrifying thought to the ego mind, because you will not fit in. And so there is a place. And what I mean by that is there's a place between the two worlds, the world of which you live in and the world you want to live in. And the place in between is the great abyss. And when you leave this world, it might suck. This world might suck, and you might desperately want out of it, and you want to get away from that to go to the world you want to live in. And when I say that, I'm talking about how you want to live, how you want to be, the lifestyle, the quality of life, etc. But here you have the familiar coming from the Latin, familias, meaning family. It's what you grew up with. Normal isn't healthy. Normal is just whatever you got used to. So you grew up with all this over here. And now you've had this vision, this sense of wanting to be over here. It's what you crave. It's what your heart and your soul cries out for. In fact, your dreams, you didn't get them by accident. They are your heart and soul crying out for expression. And that's what this world is over here. But in order to do that, you have to let go of this world. And this is familiar. Even if it sucks, you know what to expect. And human beings love certainty. And certainty is part of our downfall because it doesn't exist. It's an illusion. But the certainty of being able to predict. So if I'm with you and you treat me bad, at least I know what that is and I know how to cope with that. If I leave that and go over here to this world, I don't know what I'll have. It's too uncertain. It's terrifying. And that's the fear, is that I will lose certainty. I will lose that connection to what was familiar to me, quote unquote, my normal.
Okay. I understand that. I understand it. Okay. I've heard it with all due respect, I haven't heard it in the way you say it, because you are passionate and alive and on fire. I can feel your dragon fire through every syllable you utter.
Thank you.
But I've heard the story before. We've all heard that story before. We all know that we as bad as, or as good as the life is that we're living, we're still unhappy in certain parts of it, but we're scared to death to go to that place where we don't, where we might be happy, because we don't know we don't know what's in between it, and we don't know what other demons we'll deal with at that place where we're happy, suddenly happy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I want to ask you to go underneath it now, because
Sure.
I believe you understand even more than that. Those are the words that we say.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the things that we all know. But if we knew it, we would not be scared of it anymore. What's really underneath that? From your experience of working with people, what's really underneath it that is so petrifying? If you said to me, Danny, I'm going to take away all your pain, and I'm going to bring you to a world where you're going to experience the glory and majesty of who you are, I don't think there's anybody that would say wouldn't give you their hand and wouldn't give you the money to do it, right? But there's something that says to us, it's not really going to happen. I don't really believe it. There's a place there's a gap between what we know will happen and it happening that makes us question that. Why?
Sure.
Why do we continually question, and why are we scared to go where we know the best place in the world for us is?
The number one reason is the number one reason that people will come to me to work with me, and why they tend to be 45 plus. I do have much younger clients, but mostly it's because it's an identity crisis. To go there is an identity crisis. So I'm going to talk a little bit, just so people understand here, about the phases of life. Okay. So in the first phase of life, this is between 0 and 9 months, we actually are born into a world where we are not fully understanding of what's going on around us, and we actually think the world is us. So if a baby is in a high chair at 9 months old and drops or 8, 9 months old, drops a ceramic cup and it smashes on the floor, the baby will start to cry, and the parent will say, oh, the noise scared him or her. No, it wasn't that. The baby actually thinks it's broken because it doesn't understand the separation between itself and anything else. Then it develops out of that and goes, oh, okay, I'm not that. Fine, okay. But I am you. I am the parent. The parent and me are the same thing. And then there comes a point where we begin to recognize, oh, I'm not. And that time is called the terrible twos, where you say to your kid, go to bed, they say no. You say, get up in the morning, they say no. You say, would you like a cookie? They say no, and they'll still take it, because the no is an automatic to saying, I'm not you. Mm-hmm. The next phase of life that comes after that is the me. So it's got to be about me. I want, and you are supposed to supply me. Right? So that's the first stage is all the way to supply me. The second stage is I'm now accumulating me. This is very important. This phase of our lives is where we identify. This is where the identity is built, because we say, I'm not you when I'm 2. Now I'm not your beliefs. I'm 14, 13, in that age. I'm not your beliefs. Now I become my stuff, and I start collecting ideas. I start collecting a new family, which is called friends group, or a gang, or whatever it may be, and I start associating to that, and I'm attached to that. So now this is me, because I'm not your beliefs, I've accumulated all this. Now comes the next phase, and that next phase is this. I'm not this.
Yeah.
And that is terrifying. I'm not this. Because now I've built my identity around, I live this house in this fabulous neighborhood, I drive this wonderful car, I'm famous for this, I'm famous for that, etc., etc. But what if I'm not this? I've invested. Now listen to this. This is really important, because this is where your ego will get you. I've invested this much in being this much time, energy, effort, identity. If I admit that I'm not this, I look like an idiot. Mm-hmm. The most terrifying thing to the ego is a loss of identity or being wrong. That's why it's terrifying to go to your dragon fire, to go to the place you're supposed to go to the thing that has been calling you all your life, because it will take you to a place of challenging and asking the questions that people like you and I, Danny, confronted very early on in our lives because of our own weirdness.
Yeah.
But we confronted questions that other people don't confront, usually until they've established themselves in the world.
Yeah.
And the further along the path you go, the harder it is, because, you know, oh my God, if I've invested all this, I must be an idiot.
Yeah. So I love everything you're saying, and I love how clear it is.
Thank you.
Absolutely. You can tell you've thought it through, and you can tell the work you do is great work. And so if anybody is going through any of those stages, I want you to rush over to fullmontyleadership.com and see if Dov has space to work with you, first of all. Okay.
Thank you.
Absolutely. It'd be my honor. So now, those stages are so easy and so easy to understand and so painful to get to.
Mm-hmm.
But I noticed you stopped at the I'm not this phase, when actually there's one more phase beyond that, which is, who am I? This, and I am this. And what in your experience with working with all these people that have gone through identity crises,
Mm-hmm.
not what is the thing that makes them come to the place where they confront their belief systems, because we all confront our belief systems. That's part of anybody that's been in business, has to confront their belief systems to innovate and make new things happen.
Absolutely.
But that belief system that says, I now have the courage to say, I'm not this, what am I?
Mm-hmm.
I am this. What happens in that moment?
Well, I think, you know, it's a great question, and I appreciate you having the willingness to go to that level of depth, which is often not the case. So, again, quick story. Before I fell, for those of you who don't know, in June 1990, I fell 120 feet, 12 stories while free climbing, and landed on my face. Or as I like to say, I fell 120 feet from a self-imposed pedestal and landed on my ego. However, before the fall, I was already a speaker. I've been a speaker for 30 odd years. And before the fall, I used to hold these Wednesday nights in this hotel conference room when people could come. And, you know, there'd be 40, 50 people every Wednesday night who would pay to be there. And there was a lady who would always sit in the front, and she was one of my greatest students. She was, you know, she was very attentive. It was wonderful. And of course, then I fell and got smashed to pieces, and I couldn't do what I was doing. And it wasn't until probably 3 or 4 years later, and she had reached out, found out that I was working again, and came back to see me. And we were in our second session. At the end of the second session, very nice, quiet spoken lady, she goes, "Can I tell you something, Dov?" And I said, "Sure." And she goes, "When I used to come and see you on Wednesday nights at the Coast Plaza, I was always in awe of how powerful you were." And I said, "Oh, that's very kind, thank you." And I said, "What was it you saw?" And she said, "You were the only person I knew who really knew who they were."
Mm.
And I said, "Oh, thank you, I guess, you know, it's your perception, but thank you." And she said, "But I need to tell you something, and this might be a little insulting." And I said, "What?" She says, "I don't think you know who you are anymore."
Wow.
And I said, "Oh, okay." She goes, "But here's what's weird." And I said, "What?" She says, "You seem more powerful."
Hmm.
And I said, "Here's the answer. I don't know who I am. That's why I'm more powerful, because I'm not willing to attach to anything. That is my power, is that I will not identify as, yes, I will use the labels for a purpose of marketing or strategy or whatever it is. But the truth is that I am a transient being. I am in the flow of this divine essence called life. And I am willing to show up in my purest possible form in any given moment. So if I'm driving down the road and you cut me off, I will swear, because that's part of my humanity. will I get out of the car and have any violence? Or if you got out of the car, would I be violent with you? No, I'm just going to express what's there. And if I see a bird in the sky that flies and is magnificent, will I look up and be enthusiastic and impassioned and like, wow, this is beautiful? Where I look out on my back and I can see the mountains behind me, 6 mountains with snow on top, across a blue sky, looking across the ocean and think, wow, I'm so blessed, this is magnificent, and express that? Yes, will I stand there quietly and think to myself, oh, this is very nice? No, that's not who I am. I will be present with whatever is in front of me, and that is not holding on to the identity.
Yeah.
That is willing to let it go in every moment for whatever's next, and I don't know what that is.
So, love that. I also love the enthusiasm of the story. And I want to just present it in a slightly different way because I understand it in a slightly different pattern.
Of course.
I think the beauty about the woman saying you're less of who you are because you're less certain of who you are now introduces and allows this possibility where I think real change happens. When we are filled to the cup, when our cup is filled to the brim of ourselves, and we know a lot of people walking around full to the brim of who they are, they're hard to penetrate. They're hard to get into. There's no space in the cup for any interaction because they're so full of themselves. All they're doing is walking around in insecurity most of the time, speaking about how great they are. And we know those people, and most of the greatness comes in their past. It's not in the present. They're scared to death that in your present, you'll figure out you'll figure out that they're talking about their past. And when you isolate them, I remember talking with somebody who was telling me that I hadn't seen in 20 years. And I was so excited to see him and all the stories he told me, which were from 20 years ago. And in the moment where he was sitting with me across the table and I had bought him a cup of coffee, he looked homeless. I don't know that he was homeless, but he looked homeless. His teeth were missing. He was disheveled. And I said, okay, I understand. I knew you 20 years ago, so I know all those stories. What I'm interested in is knowing this story right here today. And the part that I hear that you are doing, and the way you say it is different than the way I said it, which is beautiful. I love the way you say it. And why shouldn't you say it differently? When we allow our cup to always empty, when we always let go of who we think we are and receive a new energy that comes into us, that new energy can take us. That's why I love the mosaic. We are one moment away from a completely different life. If we empty our cup enough to allow something new to come in, we don't know what will happen in this interaction we're having right now. We could end today and that would be it. Or we could say, hey, you know something, I love you. I want to talk to you more. Like how do we really play together? If we're willing to take that risk, if we're willing to say, my cup is empty, what would we fill it up? How would we fill this up together? What would that look like? And I want to invite the listeners to, whether you do it the way Dov is saying or you do it the way I'm saying, who cares? Do it the way you say. Do it the way the listener hears to say it. But I want to invite you to have the opportunity to be less certain about what you know and to be more in awe of what can come when you leave space for something to fill you. Does that make sense?
It does. As you know, my sign off for every show that I do on both of my podcasts is stay curious, my friend, stay curious.
Yeah.
And because I think that is the key. We need better communication. We need more love. We need more understanding. We need all of those things. But without the willingness to have the curiosity and then take action on that curiosity, of course, but to start with the curiosity, it's not about my way is the way. It's not about Danny's way is the way. It's about your way is the way for you. And where we get into trouble is we start trying to tell everybody else my way's the way. No, it's not.
Yeah.
And because my way is not even my way. My way is my way in this moment, but in the next moment, it might be a different way.
Love it. So in essence, tying up the circle a little bit, for Dov, his way is the way of the dragon. For you might be the way of the lion. For someone else, it may be the way of the lamb. But whatever your way is, it's important you find your way, you walk your way until your cup empties and a new way comes to you, and then you walk that way. Brother, I could talk to you forever because I love you as a human being. I
Thank you,
love the
sir.
work that you're doing. I want again to invite people to go to fullmontyleadership.com. Check out this guy. Check out everything he's doing. And if anything as he said has resonated with you, sign up for what he's doing, become a part of what he's doing. Do you have the courage to become the dragon that you are? Do you have the courage to be yourself? Do you have the courage to let somebody, if you don't have the courage, to help you walk through that? It's the work I do, it's the work Dov does, but you have a master in front of you right now. So if you don't feel drawn to do it with me, do it with Dov. If you don't feel drawn to do it with Dov, do it with me. I don't care who you do it with. Find somebody else that you trust, that you allow to take you into these spaces. I want to ask you the question that I ask that closes every podcast for me. When you look out your window at the world you see, and today we live in a crazy world with coronavirus going wild. When you look out your window at the world you see, is this the world you always dreamed of handing over to your children and your children's children?
I think there's definitely parts about it there is. If I look out at the external world, I think there are certain things about it that I'm very happy to offer to my adult children and my grandchildren, of course. Is it the world that I want it to be? Absolutely not, because I'm in an evolution. I live in an evolution. I am an evolution. I want to make the world a better place for everyone, not just for my children or my grandchildren. And I don't think that we can make the world a better place without raising our consciousness. As you know, I work with a lot of business leaders, and one of the things that I'll say to them is self-awareness, self-knowledge, and self-development is the new bottom line.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line we have to operate from.
So give people a tip. Give people something that they could do today, right now, that would help them become a little more self-aware.
The very first thing I would say to you is to start. I like to start in the dark side, because if you start there, you know you're coming out to the light. And so starting on the dark side is ask yourself some very basic but hard questions. And that is, what am I afraid of? Now you might go, oh, I'm afraid of heights, or I'm afraid of spiders, or whatever it is. That's not what I'm asking you. What are you psychologically afraid of? What are you afraid of getting that you say you want? Now listen to that. What are you afraid of getting that you say you want? And you go, nothing. Like, okay, write down something you want, and then ask yourself the question. So you say, okay, I want a house on XYZ Street. Fantastic. Do you have it? No. So let me ask you the question. What about you can underline that word if it makes you feel better, might be terrifying or scary about having what it is you want? And I want you to do that with the top 3 things in your life: in your health, in your finances, and in your relationships.
Yeah.
Just do that. What do you want? What might you be afraid of? And when you get to the answer, ask what might be scary about that. Take it down a couple of levels. It will blow your mind at how that is 5 years of therapy right there, without you having to pay a penny for it, just to sit with that. But you've got to give yourself time. And if there is a blessing of the time that we're living in with coronavirus and self-isolation and all those things, is that you now have the time. So don't bullshit. You have the time. Or you can watch Netflix, and you're welcome to do that. Watch Pandemic and Outbreak and all those terrifying zombie movies that people are watching for some reason. Instead, choose to take some time to be with your heart, your soul, and get in touch with your dragon fire. And you can only do that by staying curious, my friend. Stay curious.
Fabulous. Dov, tell people how they can get in touch with you. I know I've mentioned it a few times, but tell them how I can get in touch.
Thank you, Danny. Yeah. You can certainly go to fullmontyleadership.com. But a simple, easy way to go is just go DOV, which is my name, Dov, at dovbaron.com. Another way to get to me is just dovbaron.com, DOVBARON.com. And you can write to me, because I would love to know what you got out of this and what you're going to do with it. And on top of that, I want to encourage you, because Danny's here bringing you these great guests to add value to you. So I want to encourage you to go and to Apple Podcasts or wherever you go to your podcast, subscribe, review, share the show with other people. Let them know about the Mosaic. because it's important and adds value.
We're going to pause 1 minute. Julie, I'm going to call you. Come back in 5 minutes if you don't mind. Okay, we're wrapping up something. Will you come back in 5 minutes, Julie? Oh, okay, she's not responding, so I'm going to. Okay, my apologies. So we're going to edit that out, which is easy.
Right.
Let me just take a minute, if I can, to summarize.
Sure.
Would that be okay? One of the things I love about this podcast, and I love it selfishly, perhaps, because would I have ever had the opportunity to meet Dov? Probably somewhere along the line, because we have a mutual friend, I might have bumped into him. But having an opportunity, and for you guys who are listening, to be a fly on the wall, how I start off the podcast, to be able to hear conversations like this with people that work with some of the top organizations and top leaders in the world, and for you to have a personal interaction with them through our interaction together, I can't tell you how valuable that is. Dov also has podcasts, and we'll list those below in the show notes as well. But one of the things that has been so inspiring to me and so beautiful to me around this is when I look out at the world, I see a lot of people that have a lot of things. They're beautiful people and they have great things. But one of my biggest sadnesses is I don't see a lot of people that take the time to really know themselves. And to sit with a virtual stranger. We had a conversation before I was on his podcast for 2 hours, so we're not strangers really, but we've never hugged each other, held each other face to face, sat with each other, had a scotch and a cigar or a coffee together. And to just see that the way he expresses himself and the way he is so.
I'm sorry.
Julie, I'm coming. I'll see you in about 5 minutes. I'm just finishing up this. Okay. I'm so
I
sorry.
apologize.
I'll email you when I'm ready. Okay. I'm so sorry.
Sounds
okay?
Great. Thank you.
Bye-bye. So one of the things that I really want you to see is, even though we're virtual strangers, and I've been on his podcast before, we spent 2 hours together. We're not strangers because we're brothers from another mother somewhere along the line. But what inspires me is when people are so on fire and on passion and on purpose to help other people find themselves. He calls it the dragon that lives within you, but whatever that is, whether it's a dragon or a butterfly or a superhero, because the world's is so enamored with superheroes, or if it's just an ordinary, beautiful person. In the Mosaic, my book is about ordinary people, because I believe there's nothing more exquisite than a sunrise, and it's ordinary. It happens every single day. So whoever it is that you truly are, make a commitment right now and let me know that you've done it. Let Dov know that you've done it. To not get caught up in trying to be somebody else. The world, you weren't created to be somebody else. You were created for the sole purpose of bringing who you are into the world that we know today. Be that person. Live that life. And if there are people around that can help you do that, check out what Dov's doing. I can't inspire you enough to go there. Check out what I'm doing. I can't inspire you enough to do that. But most importantly, check out what you're doing, because you will inspire many, just like Dov does, just like I do, just like people that you know do. You be the inspiration that when people look at you, they say, I want to become myself like you've become yourself. What a gift that is to give to the world. Dov, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for being with us. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. Thank you for sharing your stories. Thank you for sharing your heart. Thank you for sharing the fire of your dragon with us. God
Thank you,
bless
sir. Pleasure and honor. Thank you, Danny. I really appreciate it.
It's my honor. Thank you, sir.